One star can guide a ship at sea. One word can frame a goal. One vote can change a nation. One sunbeam lights a room. One candle wipes out darkness. One laugh will conquer gloom. One step must start each journey. One word begins each prayer. One hope can raise our spirits. One touch can show you care. One voice can speak with wisdom. One heart can know what's true. One life can make a difference. You see, it's up to you. This evening, as we celebrate the accomplishments of our seniors, I want to take a moment to talk to you from the topic, It's Up to You. To begin that task, I'd like to ask you a very important question, and that is, have you begun to envision, embrace, and enlarge that with which you have been uniquely and divinely endowed so that you can use your lives to make a difference in the world? 3 points I want to share with you, and I'm going to ask if you would work with me on the first one. If you would repeat after me, and in fact, if you would turn to the person next to you and say these words to them. It's up to you, to envision who you really are. Flying in the face of a culture that promotes uniformity, this notion of the power within relies upon an understanding not of how we are all the same, but rather how we are each unique and distinct one from the other. And so the question is, what are the traits that mark you as distinctive? And how can you maximize those traits to catapult you not just to success, but more importantly, to significance? When I was in kindergarten, a couple years ago, when I was in kindergarten, I was in a play, and it was a Peanuts play. You guys know Peanuts, Charlie Brown, Snoopy, yeah, okay. So it was a Peanuts play, and I was Lucy in the play. And to this day, my mother still talks about my role in the play, and part of that is because when it was time for me to come out on stage as Lucy, I knew Lucy's part, Charlie Brown's part, Linus's part, Peppermint Patty's part. I knew everybody's part of the play. And the other thing that stood out is that my voice was deeper than any other child in the entire kindergarten. And so it was a funny thing to see this little kid with this deep voice, kind of Barry White thing going, taking over the entire play. And yet something about that is characteristic of who God created me to be. I'm a take charge kind of gal, and I know that my voice can be a powerful force. And so the question is, what are your distinctive traits? What are those things that have been a part of who you were from the time you came into this world that mark you as different and that make a distinction in your own life and in the lives of others? There's a song by Donald Lawrence that says, "See yourself in the future, you are royalty." And so my question to you is, how do you really see yourself? How do you envision yourself? And what is it that you're focused on? One writer said it this way, "What I focus on in life is what I get. If I concentrate on how bad I am or how wrong I am or how inadequate I am, if I concentrate on what I can't do and how there's not enough time to do it in, isn't that what I get every time? And yet when I think about how powerful I am and when I think about what I have left to contribute and when I think about the difference I can make on this planet, then that's what I get. You see, I recognize that it's not what happens to me, it's what I do about it." Or we can think about the words of Norman Vincent Peale, who said, "Formulate and stamp indelibly on your mind a mental picture of yourself as succeeding. Hold this picture tenaciously, never permit it to fade. Your mind will seek to develop the picture. Do not build up obstacles in your imagination." Now, one challenge that we have in envisioning who we are is envisioning what our circle of influence will be. But hold that thought, we're going to go to our second point. So turn to your neighbor one more time, and here's our second point. Repeat after me. It's up to you, to embrace who you really are. Okay. Now, part of what makes that difficult, and I hope this isn't, I would imagine this isn't just for me, this is common for many people. One of the challenges that makes it difficult for people to really not only see but to embrace who they are is the circle of influence around you. One way to think of it is to imagine that life is a theater. If life is a theater, then we have to invite our audience in very carefully. See, not everyone is healthy enough to have a front row seat in our lives. There are some people in our lives that need to be loved from a distance. We must know some of the same people. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you let go, or at least minimize your time with people who are draining or negative or incompatible, not going anywhere, those types of relationships or friendships. I want to encourage our seniors tonight to observe the relationships around you. As I listened as you were introduced tonight, as they talked about your tremendous accomplishments, I found myself thinking, what would I have been like if I had been as successful as you are at so young an age? I hope you realize that the sky is the limit, and yet you have to embrace who you are. There's no need to shrink or to hold back on who you are so that other people feel comfortable. You have a responsibility to use all of what you've been given to make a difference. There was a time in my life when I was working for a college in Washington, D.C., and I was trying to figure out what to do next with my life. And as I was struggling with that, I found that an idea came to me for a book to write. And not only did the idea come, but it came chapter outline. I knew exactly what the book was to entail. And as I moved forward and I started working on the book, the inevitable question arose, and that was, who's going to pay for this and who's going to publish it? And it's a funny thing that as you begin to embrace who you are and the talents within, sometimes the resources that you need will show up just at the time that you need them. I look around me and as I listen to your achievements and the things that you've accomplished, Youth for Tomorrow and some of the other organizations of which you're a part, sometimes you take that leap of faith. There's an expression that sometimes you get just enough light for the step that you're on, and yet you continue to move forward and to persevere. In my situation, as I moved forward to work on this book, it was a book for women who are interested in pursuing doctoral degrees. As a result of that, it opened up a business opportunity for me, and yet I had no financial resources to make this happen. And shortly after September 11th, I was in the airport in DC. I was living in that area, and I met a gentleman in line. And I'm the kind of person, I'm friendly, but I'm not starting a whole long, drawn-out conversation with a stranger. And yet this gentleman turned to me, and again, this was right after September 11th. It was at the time where you were in the airport for 2.5 hours waiting in line. And so we were waiting in line next to each other, and we began to talk. And so I figured he was a nice old man. I talked to him a little bit, and then I'd kind of move on to my book. Well, 2 hours passed, and we went through security, and we sat in the waiting area, and we were still talking. And Dr. Liberty may appreciate this. One of the things this gentleman said to me, he was in his 80s, and he was owner of a construction company, and he said to me, "You should apply to be president of Harvard University." Okay, and I thought, what in the world is he talking about? And he turned to me and said, "You won't get the job, but at least you will have shown yourself to be a contender." Yeah, it hurt my feelings a little bit, but I'm wondering about you guys and what are the ways in which you are showing yourself to be a contender every single day. Fast forwarding a little bit, a few years later, I kept in touch with him. It just was one of those times when I met someone and it was an unusual connection. And as I began to start this business I talked about, I ended up writing him a letter and I asked him if he would mentor me with my business. And I got a letter from him shortly before Christmas. This is about 3, maybe 4 years ago. And he wrote back and he said, "Dear Kenya, it's good to hear from you. I'm not taking on any philanthropic interest at this time." And I thought, I didn't ask him for money, but okay. And so at the end of the letter, he said, "I wish you well with your business. I think it's a great idea. Good luck." And enclosed in this envelope was a check for $5,000. 2 days later, I went to church and somebody handed me another envelope. Okay, in a minute you guys are going to know where I go to church and where I hang out in the airport. So you're going to get envelopes too. But in any case, someone gave me a check for $15,000 to go ahead and have the seed money I needed for my business. Why do I tell you that? One, because it's a really cool story about me getting money, but more importantly, because I hope it is illustrative for you of the things that can happen in your own life when you step out on faith. One of my favorite quotes comes from Eleanor Roosevelt, and she says, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every opportunity in which you stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do."